Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel where today we are doing a full-length review of The Unkindest Tide by Seanan McGuire. This is the 13th book in the October Daye series. For those of you that do not know, the October Daye series is an adult urban fantasy series that follows our main character of October Daye, and she is half fae and half human, and she is a knight in the fairy realm, and she tends to take on some really weird problems because she's just best suited to solve them. And in this particular book, Toby owes a debt to the Lushak, or the Sea Witch is her other name, other name she's known as. And the Lushak asks Toby to perform a task to wipe out that debt. Toby can't say no, and so she goes to the convocation where this task is going to be performed, and everything starts going awry in very typical Toby fashion, in that one of her allies gets arrested and there's a dead body and she's got to figure it all out, and the story just goes from there. I know that is a very vague plot line. However, that is very intentional because that task that Toby is performing is something that we don't really find out is even a possibility until like I want to say book 5 in this series, and so I don't really want to ruin that surprise if you have not yet read this series. Now, this is a reread for me, and as such I do break up my reviews into, this one is going to be broken up into 2 sections, the non-spoilery review, and then the spoilery section. So you can just click away if you do not want to be spoiled for this book. But let's go ahead and jump in and first talk about the world building. Now, we are at the point in this series where there isn't a ton of new world like we have a lot of the world building in place for this to feel like a very lush, very real kind of world that could potentially exist in our own world, and I love that. But one thing that I think that Seanan McGuire does really, really well is introduce new places or new concepts in a way that feels very, very natural. So in this particular book, we are going to a place called the Duchy of Ships, which we have never heard of in this book, but it feels very natural how it's introduced and why we wouldn't know about it yet. And so we do get to explore more of this world and find out more interesting things, including like how the undersea kingdoms kind of govern themselves and what the people think about that governing and everything. And it just feels very, very natural. However, I will say there is not enough world building in this book that you could easily follow along if you have not read the previous books in the series. So it definitely adds to what is already there, but it really doesn't give you enough of the foundation for you to easily follow along if you haven't read the previous books. But I do appreciate what we did. I love the world building of this, of Fairy. I think it's just absolutely phenomenal. Next, let's talk about the characters, because speaking of like not really giving enough to follow along if you haven't read the rest of the series, that's where we're at with the characters too. These characters are really well developed, very independent, like they just feel like real people. And so we don't really need to like delve into who they are as people, because we've already done that in the series. And so we're at the point where we're introducing new characters, bringing like tertiary characters maybe to the forefront and learning more about them, chipping away at the layers of backstories of some of these characters who have been alive for like forever. We're doing a lot of that kind of stuff, as well as some relationship development, but even that is starting to get to the point where there's not a ton that can be done. And so we see them learn and grow, but it's like they're already such full characters that for Toby, there's not a ton. There's some still left to find out, but it's not the focus, really. So in this particular book, obviously, we're focusing a lot on the Lushak and this particular thing that she is asking Toby to do, and her thoughts and feelings about it, and even her interactions with a sister, because in this particular book we do see her interacting with a sister. We have seen this before, but 2 other times, but one of those sisters that she interacted with previously, she thinks is a bit of a spoiled brat, and the other, the other sister, they're kind of nemesis. And so like, this is actually the first time we've ever seen her interact with a sister that she actually likes. And I found that to be really, really interesting. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting is that we pulled this kind of sideline character a little bit more to the forefront and gave some interesting information. Like, we're setting up some clues for this to be kind of a mystery character, and I am down for it because I love this character and I really want to know what their backstory is. And I think that because we are laying those clues and that really pumping up the mystery about this character, that we will find out more about them in the future books, and I am so excited for that. But generally speaking, I love these characters. They feel like real people, they interact like real people, and I just really, really enjoy them. Next, let's talk about the plot. So generally speaking, I like this plot. So I love that we've been talking about Toby performing this task again since like book 5, I think. And you know, we were just kind of waiting, and we finally got it. But I love that it wasn't just left hanging. I don't know, like, I just really like it. Makes it feel more like a real world, right? We have this thing where the Lushak said, "I'm going to need you to do this," and then we have a book where like Toby actually does it. I don't know, like, I really, really enjoy that aspect of it. I think the plot is interesting in and of itself. There is that subplot of like this arrest and the murder, and I thought it was interesting until we got to the person's motivations for doing that, like the motivations behind the arrest and the murder. It felt very strange to me. Like, it didn't really feel in line with the rest of the series. It just kind of felt weird. And so to some extent, I kind of ignored it a little bit because I was just like, this is not a normal motivation that we get in this world. And so, and it wasn't, I feel like it was almost a little bit glossed over. And so it didn't feel quite right to me. But when I ignored that portion of it, I actually really, really liked the other part of the story, which was Toby performing this task and connecting with people and like basically everything other than figuring out the motivations of the person who, you know, I guess the villains, like, apart from that motivation aspect, I really did think that everything else was really, really nice. Next, let's talk about the pacing and the writing style. So the writing style, as always, is just good. It is not particularly flowery, but it flows very, very nicely. If you have read the previous books in this series, it is more of the same. Pacing was generally very, very good in that it's kind of, once the story starts going, it really never lets up. It's not breakneck speed, but it is fast paced, and it doesn't really give you a chance to breathe until you get to the end. And I thought that was very nice. The only thing is that this is the 13th book in the series, and so the first part of the book has a lot of like refresher material that you generally get from later books in a series. Like, remember this thing that happened last book or the previous 3 books. Like, let me remind you what happened in this series. And because this is the 13th book in the series, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be refreshed. It's a complicated world with a lot of things going on, and so we need to be refreshed on a lot. However, it did make it pretty clunky. Like, I don't think that there's any real nice way to give that refresher information in the story without it appearing to be very clunky. So I'm not sure that this could have been done in a better way, other than pulling it out as like a preface. I know how to speak. But other than that, I'm not entirely certain how the author could have done this in a way that didn't feel clunky. But it's really mostly in the first chapter and a little bit in chapter 2 and chapter 3. But after that, the plot really picks up and it just goes and goes, and we don't have that refresher information anymore. So next, let's talk about content warnings. Now, this is not the only thing that needs to be warned for. However, I am currently learning how to recognize content that needs to be warned for, and I'm not very good at it right now. But I did want to give you the heads up that in this particular book, there is pervasive self-harm. It has to do with Toby's magic, and her reasonings behind the self-harm are not generally the reasonings that people in general self-harm. However, she does it. It is pervasive through this book and previous books in this series. Like I said, it may not be the only thing that needs to be warned for, but it is the only one that I know for sure needs to be warned for. The other FYI, if you did not catch this from me talking about the characters and the world building, this is not a standalone book, and I would never ever recommend reading it as such, because I love this like 5 stars much, because it is just so good. But part of why it's so good is we have all that backstory and it's building on it. And so I honestly don't know how anybody could come into reading this as a standalone and even enjoy it at all, to be honest. So I do not recommend reading this as a standalone. I very much recommend reading all the previous books. And so there you go. But overall, I loved this book. I love this book so much. This storyline of this task being performed is really about righting a wrong that has been left to just fester for a very, very long time. And it's helping to heal one of our characters. It was really just beautiful to see. And I really, really enjoyed my time with this book. And I did end up giving it 5 stars. So that is it for my non-spoilery section. So let's go ahead and jump into the spoilery section. If you do not want to be spoiled, this is your cue to go ahead and click away. Okay, bye. So I actually didn't have a ton of stuff to talk about other than, like, again, I love this storyline so much. I think that we get to really spend a lot of time with the Lushak and what her feelings are and how like mixed emotions she's got going into this convocation and turning the Selkies back into the Roan, and like what does it mean, and just honestly, like everything having to do with the Lushak was really interesting in the book, from again watching her deal with those mixed emotions to watching her with Amphitrite and like, oh, actually, she does have a sister that she likes, and it's really interesting to watch that interaction, to even the scene at the end where Toby is talking to the Lushak and being like, we're your family. Like, we are a found family, and we are yours, and you are ours. And I love, love, love that. I even love the part where this is something that I've touched on before, like, where the Lushak cannot lie, and she had said that she was going to be the one to kill Toby. And in this book, she brings it up, and it's just like, I've said that I'm going to kill you. Like, oh my gosh. And Toby's just like, yeah, I get through the day by not thinking about it, number one. But number two, I really believe that we're going to be able to break this truth geese before you have to kill me. And I love that absolute faith that Toby has in her own abilities as a hero, as well as the Lushak's abilities, that together they're this unstoppable team that can break a geese that has been active for so many years. So I adore that. To even watching the Lushak at the end, having this burden lifted from her shoulders, that this process of turning the Selkies into the Roan means that she can start to heal, right? Like really focus on healing this wound that has been open for so long. And so it was really interesting to watch all of that happen. I also thought it was really interesting that the Lushak made the comment of, you'll go do this, if this person dies, then you can just resurrect them and it'll be practice for later. And it's like, Lushak, what do you have up your sleeve? Because that's a thing that sounds like it's about the prophecy having to do with Amandine's line. and who's dying and why are we who died and who does Toby need to resurrect? Of course, I'm like, I'm probably gonna have to wait a couple of books to like find out what that's all about. But I do think it is very, very interesting that we do have that hint given. The other thing, now I did allude to this in the character and character development section of the non-spoiler review, but Marcia, you guys, Marcia is like, we've had clues in the last couple of books that maybe Marcia is a little bit more than what she seems, but obviously in this book it is so there. And so Seanan McGuire is really pulling our focus into this mystery of who Marcia actually is. Obviously, like, she was able to cross the barrier into the know with no problem when she should have been like on the floor dying or feeling like she wants to die. She knows all this marsh water charm. She's able to deal with a lot of people who could like kill her in a blink of an eye. Like, really weird stuff, right? And even when she talks about the Selkie skin and why she didn't put it on, she gives her reasons as like, this is not my destiny. But when she does, her syntax is oddly like a little old-fashioned, a little formal, not how she normally speaks at all. And so I'm just like, Marcia, who are you? Are you secretly really, really old? Or did you spend time in a court with fae who are really old? Like, and if so, how are you still alive? Like, how did that happen and how are you still alive? Are you like secretly a firstborn that is in hiding? Which, you guys, I kind of hope it's that one. I'm not gonna lie. I really hope we find out Marcia is like secretly a firstborn, although I would not put money on that one. But like, I am so intrigued by Marcia. I have been for a while, but like this book, like really, again, it pulls attention. And of course, like if we didn't catch all of those clues, we have Amphitrite or Pete, Captain Pete, saying, "Who are you?" And Marcia starts to answer. I'm Marcia. Remember we met. She's like, "Oh no, you told me your name, but you did not tell me who you are." And so I'm just like, I really want to know. So I am really excited to get further into this series. Obviously, so this is the last published book. The next book is coming out very shortly. I'm excited to see what clues we get in the next one. Maybe Marcia's will finally be revealed. I hope so. I want to know about Marcia so badly. Even if we get more clues, I'm okay with that for now. I just want to know. But that is it, you guys. Those are all my thoughts and feelings about this book. I adore it. I cannot wait for the next one. Let me know down below if you've read this, what your thoughts and feelings about this book are. But that is all I have. So until next time, guys, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.